All right, folks, coming up on today's show, we're diving into what I hope is the final 7-round mock draft for the Atlanta Falcons. Now, let me make this crystal clear. This isn't me playing Madden GM, all right? This isn't me being Terry Fontenot or Raheem Morris. This is just my best prediction of what they might actually do come draft night. And with the 15th overall pick in the first round, I'm rolling with Mike Green, defensive end out of Marshall. That's my gun-to-the-head pick. And let's be real, I hope there's not an actual gun involved here, because anything can happen between picks 1 and 14. But if Green is still on the board when the Falcons are up, I really think that's their guy. Now, for those who don't know much about him, Green stands at 6'3", weighs 251 pounds. So no, he's not one of those freakishly massive edge guys. He's not going to be planting his hand in the dirt like Calais Campbell or Zach Harrison in a 3-4. Nah, I see him fitting more as an outside linebacker. That's not what he was doing at Marshall, so there might be some growing pains there, especially when it comes to coverage and all the extra responsibilities. But from a physical standpoint, he can handle it. This dude's got real bend, elite burst, and that kind of track speed that lets him shoot into the backfield before the quarterback even hits that third step in his drop. That's what makes him pop off the screen, his explosiveness. He's not just fast, he's fast with a purpose. Now here's the catch. He's a bit of a one-year wonder. We've only really seen him in 2024. There's barely any tape from 2023. He transferred to Marshall after spending a short time at Virginia, where he was dismissed in 2022 due to a sexual assault allegation. So yeah, teams are going to have to do their due diligence off the field. But on the field in 2024, he looked the part of a legit day one NFL pass rusher. I'm not going to sit here and call him a generational talent, but the Falcons haven't had a player hit 7 sacks in nearly a decade. That's not an exaggeration. That's real. It's one of the longest droughts in the entire NFL. So if you're asking me who breaks that streak, Mike Green's got the juice to do it, and I think he's going to be their top pass rushing target if he's available. Now let's keep this train rolling into the second round. So let's keep this thing moving. Round 2 of the Falcons mock draft. I've got Atlanta going with Omar Norman-Lott, the defensive tackle out of Tennessee. Now let's talk about this dude. He's a bit of a mystery. On one hand, you could argue he's got better pass rushing juice than even Mason Graham, who's going to be a top 10 pick in this class. That's not nothing. But here's where it gets weird. He didn't even start at Tennessee. Yup, despite being part of a really strong D-line, he was a rotational guy. Sub-package player in Tim Banks' defense, only played about 17 snaps per game. But here's the kicker. His pass rush win rate, a ridiculous 12.6%. That was tops among all interior defensive linemen. 4 sacks, 27 pressures, and again, that's with limited reps. Imagine if this guy got 30-40 snaps a game. You're talking serious potential. So what's the issue? Well, he's not great against the run on early downs, and there's concern about whether he's got the gas tank to be a full-time, 4-quarter player. This isn't a polished product, this is a project, but it's the kind of project Raheem Morris might look at and say, I can work with that. You get this guy in the building, pair him up with Grady Jarrett, and suddenly you've got a potential game wrecker on the inside. Maybe he's not the safest pick, but Atlanta is desperate for interior pressure. They might roll the dice on a guy with that kind of upside, even if he spent more time on the sideline than they'd like. Now, Atlanta doesn't have a third-round pick. They sent that one to New England in the Matthew Judon trade. But in the 4th round, boom, we're still going pedal to the metal on the pass rush. This time, it's LSU's Savion Jones. Jones is a big dude, 6'5", 283 pounds. And I know what you're thinking. Didn't we just draft Mike Green? Isn't that overkill? Not in a 3-4, my friends. See, Green's going to be flying off the edge like Arnold Ebiketie or Leonard Floyd. But Jones? Jones is your classic hand-in-the-dirt type. Think Calais Campbell or Zach Harrison. He's the kind of guy who plays with power, anchors the edge, and can handle the dirty work inside. He was a 2-year starter at LSU who occasionally flipped between end and outside backer, so he's got some versatility. First few years in Baton Rouge were quiet, but his senior year? Boom. 43 pressures, 4.5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. And keep in mind, we're in round 4. You're not drafting perfect prospects here. You're drafting guys with traits and upside, and Jones has both. At this point, I'm channeling my inner Kylo Ren, and I'm all about that pass rush help. Picture this. You grab Mike Green and pair him up with Leonard Floyd. Then you slide Rook inside to take over where Zach Harrison is, and you've got Savon Jones and Zach Harrison rotating at defensive end. Meanwhile, Omar Norman-Lott can rotate with Rook at defensive tackle. This setup gives you a nice mix of youth and experience on the defensive line. Now, is this going to be a top 5 or even a top 10 defensive line? Probably not. But honestly, I just need it to not be in the bottom 5 anymore. I'd do just about anything for this defense to rank around 20th in sacks. Just get it to a point where it's decent. Bringing in an extra edge rusher like Savon Jones, who showed a ton of potential in his final year with the Tigers, is a gamble I'm willing to take in the 4th round. Now, about that 5th round pick? Yeah, it's up in the air thanks to some alleged tampering involving Kirk. Thanks, Kirk. But they do have a couple of 7th round picks. With their first 7th round selection, I'm going with Jalen Smith, a cornerback out of USC. I'll be honest, it's round 7, so I won't pretend to know everything about Jalen. What I do know is that he was a 3-year starter for the Trojans. He might not have the biggest frame at 5'10" and 187 pounds, but he's got some solid speed and agility. Plus, he can be moved around from inside to outside, which is always a bonus. Having some extra competition at the nickel corner spot is crucial, especially as the value of that position keeps rising. If you could invest in NFL positions like stocks, I'd be all in on nickel corners right now. If Jalen can stay healthy, I think he can carve out a spot in the league. I like the idea of Atlanta picking a corner in the 7th round since they haven't drafted one since Clark Phillips. Adding depth at such an important position is a smart move. Now, with that last 7th round pick, it's a bit tricky since I'm filming this during a live session on Monday afternoon, and they've signed Easton Stick by now. But I'm keeping Curtis Rohr in the mix anyway. I chose the Indiana quarterback to round out this draft because I felt the Falcons needed another QB. Even though they signed Stick, we were on the same wavelength, just taking different paths. Rohr is kind of a badass. He played an entire season with a torn ACL. Plus, it would be an NFL first to have 2 quarterbacks on the roster who both played for Indiana. That's never happened before. So for a 7th round pick, why not take a shot on Curtis Rohr? But let's be real. With Stick joining the quarterback room, the chances of the Falcons going for another QB are pretty slim now. So how would you grade my mock draft? Let's quickly recap. I think you're really just grading my first 3 picks because honestly, I don't have sky-high expectations for the 7th round guys. I went with Mike Green as an outside linebacker, Omar Norman-Lott as a hopeful replacement for Grady Jarrett with some pass rush potential, and Savon Jones to rotate with Zach Harrison at defensive end. So how would you rate it? A, B, C, D, or F? I'm giving myself a B-. Not because I think I bombed it, though some might call me Terry Pie Font, but because I only had 2 picks in the first 3 rounds. It's tough to give yourself an A when other teams have multiple 2nd and 3rd round picks. In the end, I found 1 starter and 2 rotational pieces, which isn't too shabby for a team with just 3 picks in the first 4 rounds. If you're still with me, hit that subscribe button down below. I appreciate everyone who sticks around until the end.
If you're still watching, drop an ATL in the comments. I love seeing that end of video crew. Let me know when you're ready.